Now, former President Jacob Zuma is expected to meet the ANC's top six this morning as the deadline for his lawyers to submit answering papers for the contempt of court proceedings ends by close of business today. Now, the Zondo Commission has asked for a 2-year imprisonment if the former head of state is found to have been in contempt of court. The proceedings will be heard later this morning. Let's unpack the story for you now. We're joined by our senior political reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, in the studio. Ziyanda, I think perhaps before we get to Luthuli House this morning, just bring us up to speed on where we are at in terms of the state capture inquiry asking the Constitutional Court to find the former president in contempt of court, and now his lawyers have to submit their papers. That's where we're at now.
That's where we are. So by the close of business today, the former president's lawyers must have submitted then, their papers in terms of what they believe should happen in terms of the contempt of court proceedings. You remember the former president was supposed to have appeared at the Zondo Commission in February, and earlier on this month, the Constitutional Court had actually ruled in February to say that the former president is obligated, constitutionally so, to actually adhere to the summons that were issued to him. So the meeting with the ANC's top six comes on a day when those papers actually need to be submitted in the Zondo Commission by the 12th of this month, which is on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is on Friday. Yeah, it is on Friday. The Zondo Commission must also then file its answering papers, and ultimately the process of the response and the respondents and the answering affidavits needs to be concluded by the 19th of March, and then on the 26th of March is when those contempt of court proceedings get underway. The former president, depending then on what the decision is, he may not submit those papers, but then he faces the risk of those proceedings and the ruling being taken without his inputs. But, Michelle, it's also important that this NC Top 6 meeting is happening on the day that the papers are also due, because the State Capture Commission has left somewhat of a gap for the former president. They've said that the 2-year imprisonment, they would withdraw it if the former president appears before the Zondo Commission before the end of March. So this is why then there's this widespread speculation that the discussions that are going to be taking place today with the NC's top six is for the former president to take, that opportunity and that gap that has been left by the Zondo Commission.
Yeah. I mean, what do we read into the fact that, senior political leaders have met with the former president before, but it's been on his home turf? Today, he's traveling to Luthuli House.
There's lots to be made about that. I mean, there have been reports that the former president actually wanted the top six to meet at his home, and that and there's also been reports that he actually didn't even want to meet with the top six, and there's actually been direct communication with Secretary General Ace Magashule and the former president directly, but not necessarily the top six. Then you had Deputy Secretary General Jessie Duarte also going to Nkandla, and it's not clear whether or not she was there to represent the top six, or if she was there in her individual capacity. In the Sunday papers yesterday, she was quoted as being quite, brash about being questioned for going to Nkandla on her own. We've also seen Police Minister Bheki Cele, who we understand was also sent to test the waters with the former president when he went there. And we heard President Cyril Ramaphosa sort of defending Cele in terms of his visit because of the conflict of interest, so to speak, that was raised to say, but there could be a warrant of arrest. You have an entire police minister going to visit a man who could possibly be arrested by officers in blue. And the president said that shouldn't be read too much into. But the point is, to go back to your question, it says a lot that, the former president is coming to Johannesburg to meet with the top six in Luthuli House, because there was concern that if the top six went to Nkandla, it would be seen as if they are the ones trying to beg and plead with the former president to actually go to the commission, whereas, from those I've spoken to, they'll tell you that this is actually meant to help him as a disciplined member of the movement.
It's all about optics, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And as we think about the top six, very quickly for us, Yanda, can we already look at that list of top six and say these are the people who will be in support of the former president?
You know, the issue of the top six is a very interesting one because of how the machinations within the top six are moving. And I say this because the 2022 elective conference is coming up, and alliances are forever shifting. So one, we know that the relationship between Deputy President in the ANC, David Mabuza, and the former president is frayed. We know that Ace Magashule and Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte are likely to be the ones to be more sympathetic to the former president. As we've seen, they're the ones who've actually had direct communication with Zuma. The likes of Paul Mashatile provide an interesting case because, you know, we've heard that there's been some realignment of sort with the former premiers ahead of that elective conference. And so everything is about the optics, but everybody's also got their own individual interests. And at the stage at which interests converge is where we see alliances and factions coming together. So it's going to be a very interesting meeting taking place. We know, you know, Gwede Mantashe is likely to not be on the side of the former president and align with President Cyril Ramaphosa. But who knows? Maybe the relationship with David Mabuza and the former president isn't as frayed as we believe. No permanent friends and foes in politics, Michelle. And it's all about interests converging at one stage or the other.
Yeah. Ziyanda Ngcobo, no doubt we'll hear from you throughout the day today. Big day as the former president heads to Lutuli House for a meeting with the top six. Two big issues converging there. The deadline for Zuma's lawyers to submit answering papers for those contempt of court proceedings also ending close of business today. And of course, we'll keep our eyes on those big developments.